Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Georges River Local Planning Panel for Thursday, the 24th of October, 2024. My name is Stuart McDonald, and I'm the state-appointed independent chair of today's panel meeting. On my left is Jenny Simpson, who is a community representative on the panel. On my immediate right is Nicholas Skelton, who is an expert panel member, and on my far right is Helen Deegan, who is also an expert panel member. I'm afraid I'm going to have to do a little bit of talking up front just to acquaint everyone with the protocol for today's meeting. And then we will hear from people who've registered to speak on the 6 items that we have today on today's agenda. So some of this is going to sound a bit formal, my apologies, but I'm required to enunciate these things in order to officially run through the protocol for the meeting. So this panel has been appointed by the Minister for Planning to determine specified development applications, including those on the agenda today, in accordance with the requirements of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The Georges River Local Planning Panel acknowledges the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. I am required also to advise you that under the provisions of the Act, this meeting is being live streamed, so we're webcasting and will be made available on the Council's website. In accordance with our meeting protocols, interested parties wishing to make representations to the panel were requested to register. We have a total of 9 registrations, and I'll come to those in just a moment. Some of those will be heard in person, so thank you for those who are in attendance today, and some are able to address the panel online. So it's a bit of a hybrid meeting. And just by way of background, the panel has been provided with documentation for each of the applications that are before us today. So we have copies of plans, all the applicants' details, including the statements of environmental effects and any clause 4.6 submissions. We also have been given details of the submissions and the nature of the submissions, and we've been supplied with the assessment report from the council officers on each of the applications. And then on top of that, today, prior to this meeting, we've been to each of the sites to inspect the sites, including some of the objectors' properties where we were specifically requested to inspect from their property. I just wanted to give you all of that background by way of informing you that we do have quite a bit of information in front of us. So we're here reasonably well informed, but of course, an important component of our decision making is to hear from people who want to address the panel. And that includes both applicants, representatives, and people who've raised objections about particular applications. I might just run through the list of speakers just to confirm their attendance. So item 1 on the agenda is 89 to 92 Botany Road, Carlton, and we have Rosalind Magro. She's on the phone, is that right, Cassandra? She's available, so you've confirmed that? Yes. And yes. Nat Aya, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, you're here. Item number 2 at Queens Road, Connells Point. We have Bianca and Ivan Pepic. Hello. Melinda Mars here as well, thank you. Townsend, 42 Townsend Street, Blakehurst. There's Atif Ghali on the phone.
Correct.
Also confirmed, thank you. Bruce Smith on the phone.
Correct.
Correct, thank you. George Isle in person. George, you're the applicant? Yep. And Kim Burrell, you're here as well, thank you. And then the final speaker today is in relation to 58 Walter Street, and that's Alex Dunas.
Also online.
Also on Teams, right, thank
Correct. Yep.
you. Okay.
Also here, thank you.
Okay, everyone present and accounted for. Thank you. I'll now turn to disclosures of interest. As required under the Code of Conduct for the panel, members are required to disclose any conflicts of interest in respect of anything on the agenda today. We've all signed forms, so provide any conflicts of interest in writing, and I understand there are none. So none of the panel members today have declared any conflicts of interest. So I'll just put that on the public record. As I said earlier, we have 6 applications before us. We've done the site inspections. We'll deal with each application in the order they appear on the council's agenda on the website. So people will be asked to come forward and speak, or if you're online, asked to speak, you'll each have 3 minutes to address the panel. If someone has spoken before you on the same item and has raised matters that you agree with, it's fine to just confirm that you agree with the previous speaker in relation to X, Y and Z, but equally if you have matters you want to bring to our attention, please do so. I think we only have one person who's going to be joining us via Teams. So when you're called, just turn your microphone and camera on if you wouldn't mind. Just finally, just a reminder that any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language used may result in that person be exposed to liability. I'm sure that won't happen today, but I'm obliged to inform you of that. And the council and the panel take no responsibility for an individual's behaviour in that regard. Once we've heard from everybody, the public session of this meeting will be closed and the panel will retire to consider our position on each of the applications. The other people sitting around the chamber today are council officers who are here to assist us as well, and they may be called upon to answer any questions during the course of today's public meeting as well. Once you are called to speak, and you're finished, just pause for a moment because the panel may have questions for you as well. So just be aware that you may be asked to respond to certain matters. Okay, I think that's enough of the preliminaries. We'll now call the speakers to come forward. So in relation to item 1 at 88 to 92 Botany Road, item 1 on the agenda, which is for lighting design for an approved place of public worship. The first speaker is Rosalind Magro. If you could come. Oh, you're on the phone. Beg your pardon, Rosalind.
If you press *6, it'll unmute.
Yes, good afternoon. It's Rosalind Magro. I'd just like to say thank you for letting me have a say today at this meeting. I live at 91 Botany Street, Carlton, directly across from the car park and the public place of worship, which is going up. The lighting that has been put up is quite overboring, I think, because we have cars coming down the street and lights that come into the place as it is, because 92 used to be a house, and my front rooms where my husband sick on the opposite side of the house is my daughter and my 6-month-old granddaughter. Lights come in there. I also did work at that nursing home over 30 years. The lighting that was there was no problem at that time. They had one small light at the front. They had a centre light that was only to the boundary where you walked in. They had 2 small lights at the side, left side where the exit was, and one on the right-hand side as well to go to there. And at the back, they had one sensor light. I know it's a car park that's going there. We have a street light, which is directly outside my home, which lights up the street. The amount of people that will be coming out of there with plenty of lighting. Also, you know, the amount of lights, it'll be lit up to me like a Christmas tree. I know it's not a good saying, but to me, it'd be lit up like a Christmas tree. I mean, it's R2 zone. We're all houses, which is around it. I think it's very unfair that with myself, I'm an aged care nurse. I do all different shifts. And I just think what I've seen on the plans to what used to be there when it was a nursing home and when it was just a house where we had no lights coming in at all. And there's lights all around that, down the side, out the front. The whole street will be lit up. You know, I mean, when I want to sleep on my shifts, I need to get some sleep. Otherwise, I'll be affected by that, which I did mention once before. The same thing what I'm mentioning now. Yes, I just think, you know, that's all I'm just asking to take into consideration of, you know, the whole street of it, the corner block, it'll all come over on my side. And as I said, if you were there this afternoon, thank you for coming. There is a street light right on my corner, which does light up very bright. Thank you very much.
Yes, Zania Avenue, which is there. Yeah, thank you. My name is Nat Iyer, and I reside at 27 Zania Avenue, Carlton, which is right next to the proposed development site in regards to the lighting application. And I'm also representing Mr. Mata Prasad, who is straight opposite to the same property. Unfortunately, he has a medical emergency to attend, so I take the liberty to represent him as well. And thanks for the opportunity to speak. So my concerns of the DA application with respect to the lighting design are as follows. As a layman, I don't understand the technical details which are attached to this application in terms of the lighting and the height and the luminous level and all that. However, for 27 car spaces, 24 external lighting seems excessive. Considering even the car park, which is right next door to this the council car park, which has more than 27 car spaces, far fewer lights. I could count about 3 or 4. So in this particular application, this almost equates to one lighting or one light pole per car space. Right? Point number 2, assuming that we go ahead with this lighting design approval with all these lights coming on, I'm not sure what will be the impact that it will have, and I can't even imagine how this will change the characteristics of the residential area. And the third point is the timing. The application states that the lights will be turned off between 9:55 p.m. and 9 a.m. in the morning. there are a couple of points to it. One, who is going to enforce this 9:55 p.m. Turning off until 9 o'clock? Right now, any violation at the site, it's the residents' burden to complain to the council, and then council gets there and addresses that, right? But in this case, at 9:55, if it's not turned off, where do we go? And the application, the document doesn't really specify. That's one. Number two is, if the lights are switched off between 9:55 and 9, I'm assuming that from 9 a.m. to 9:55 p.m., the lights would be on, which doesn't really make sense. Why do you need lights on in daylight at 9 a.m.? I understand it's 6 p.m. to 9:55 p.m. It makes sense. So I'm not really sure, why we need to turn it off at 9 o'clock. And finally, according to the document, I just realized that this whole thing is on an 18-month trial period. And I don't understand why we have to go through this every time. That's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Iyer? No. You probably noticed we've been taking notes, so we'll certainly take on board your comments. Thank you for that. All right, they were the two registered speakers for item number 1 at Botany Road, Carlton. The next item for which there are speakers is at 25A Queens Road, Connells Point, which is an application for a dwelling house and associated works. And the first registered speaker on our list is Mr. and Mrs. Purvich. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologise if I'm not. If you could just confirm your address, so we understand the relationship to the subject property as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm Bianca. This is my husband Ivan. We are the owners of 25B Queens Road, which is the subdivision directly behind 25A. Okay. So, dear panel members, there are many factors of this proposed development that have serious and substantial adverse effects for us. These include a complete obstruction of highly sought after views that we've invested heavily into obtain, dismantling privacy, loss of amenity and enjoyment of our property, and the development application also breached various controls and guiding principles, and there is also aesthetic inconsistency. We urge you to please take these matters seriously. So the character of the dwelling, the proposed increase from a 2 to 3 story dwelling is outside and at odds with the existing streetscape. The two properties at either side of the proposed development are only 2 stories. Moreover, unlike 23 Queens Road, 25B and 25A are subdivided lots, and our property, being directly behind, is also only 2 stories. Infrastructure has not been established to enable different properties to have tiered housing whereby different properties can accommodate different heights while not impacting the views, use and enjoyment of other properties. The key principle of Georges River Environmental Plan is to minimise adverse visual impact, disruption of views, loss of privacy and loss of sunshine to existing residential development. Every element of the above stated principle is being contravened by the proposed development. The proposal will remove our water views completely, impacting use and enjoyment of our land, which is our right. Adversely impacting water views and impacting street aesthetic and similar consequences will also inevitably impact the value of not just ours, but surrounding properties, causing significant economic loss to many. This is of utmost concern, considering that the proposal exceeds height restrictions and the maximum permissible of stories of 2. The contraventions of code should not be permitted as a result. Noting the financial and other impact, the decision not to approve the DA is further reinforced, and we think that the prejudice to many outweighs any benefit, even if all aspects of the development were compliant, which they are not. We are also concerned that there was an incorrect description and assessment of the surrounding residents. There were multiple erroneous, misleading and fabricated statements in the Statement of Environmental Effects that were submitted. Our property was described incorrectly in the plans. Building works on our property commenced in June 2023, well before the proposed development application was submitted, and therefore the Statement of Environmental Effects was a fabrication. The images on page 49 and 50 were misleading and depicted an old drawing of our property as a single-storey dwelling, where it is 2 stories. It should have been described as a 2-storey brick COLORBOND house under construction. It also incorrectly described number 23, the property directly next door, as a 3-storey brick house when it is 2 stories. Therefore, the true impact was not stated. As previously mentioned, it will completely block our water views. The shade analysis also has a significant impact on our property, which will now cast total shade over the entire backyard, deck, plunge pool and vegetation, which is the only outdoor space, and therefore decreasing our use of recreational space. The overshadowing will also impact vegetation growth, which is of concern given we have a landscape mandate from council under our approved DA, which we will not be able to achieve. The proposal causes significant privacy concerns, as there is now the addition of multiple windows, rear balcony, now facing our master bedroom and peering directly into our living spaces, yard and pool, significantly and objectively impacting privacy. The property directly next door to the proposed development has recently been renovated under approved DA, which is 29A Queens Road, with a total height of only 8.5 to 8.6 metres. This development does not have a subdivision directly behind and therefore created no direct view obstruction. In closing, it's clear that the proposed development carries with it serious and substantial adverse effects, from dismantling privacy to a complete obstruction of highly sought after views that ourselves and residents have invested heavily in, to the loss of amenity and use of enjoyment of our property, to the breach of various controls and guiding principles to aesthetic inconsistency, among other things. Please consider this in your assessment.
Good, thank you. Have you read the council officer's assessment report and recommendation in the?
Briefly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you're aware of the council's position.
Recommendation. Yeah.
Any questions of the speakers? No, I think.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Melinda Mars.
Just test if this is on. It's on.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposal. I am one of the owners of 23 Queens Road. I object to the proposal on 3 grounds. The first being the proposal is not compliant with planning regulations and there is no reasonable justification for deviating from these. Second, the proposal is not in line with the local surrounds and landscapes. And lastly, I have concerns over the adequacy of the unauthorised works completed by the applicant to which the designs rely on. To expand on item 1, there are several areas I do not support. The first being the 3-storey dwelling. The proposal outlines 3 stories, whereas the area is zoned R2, zoning low density residential. There are no neighbour dwellings which are more than 2 stories high in any one point on the land. The building height, it exceeds the maximum allowable height by an extraordinary 680 millimetres. The new ground floor veranda, it shows a depth of 2.4 metres, which is 60% greater than the maximum allowable depth. The side setbacks. All of the setbacks breaches the minimum side setbacks of 1.5 metres. The ground floor remains only 905 millimetres to the western boundary. The reflective glazed surfaces show a large mass of highly reflective colours and excessive glazing. The landscaping, I object to the non-native plant bamboo shown in the landscaping plans. And lastly, the alterations. Whilst the application states that it relates to alterations, based on the scope and the size of the change, it's my view that the proposal appears to basically be a new dwelling. In summary of these items above, if they were to be accepted and those deviations supported, they would result in negative impacts to our enjoyment. And these are a reduction of views and visual amenity, particularly of the Georges River, which will be reduced from both our master bedroom and our living areas and veranda, a reduction in privacy between the dwellings, an increase in glare and sunlight reflection, an increase in potential noise and a reduction in quiet enjoyment, an increase in shade over our property, and lastly, potential to cause damage through planting of bamboo plants with aggressive root systems. On the second item, it's our view that the proposal outlines a large dwelling with significant bulk. This design is not in character with the surrounding locality and the neighbour dwellings. The proposed dwelling is predominantly white, which is not harmonious to the land's natural characteristics. It does not enhance the foreshore scenic protection area. And lastly, on item 3, with regards to the unauthorised works, they are relevant to this proposal in 2 areas. First, we have doubts over the safety of the unapproved retaining walls that have been recently built by the applicant and their ability to withstand excavation vibrations from developments undertaken at this site. There are already signs of cracking. Second, we have concerns over the adequacy of the recently installed stormwater system by the applicant. This was not approved by council. So we respectively request Georges River Council to undertake an independent planning review retrospective of these works, particularly if future proposals, this proposal and any future proposals rely on them. In summary, we are not supportive of the proposed development. It is not in accordance with planning regulations and guidelines, nor it is aligned with the character and amenity of our neighbourhood. The proposal would have negative impacts on our enjoyment of shared views, privacy, sunlight and quiet enjoyment. We have concerns over the applicant's behaviours, as evidenced by the works completed on the foreshore building line, which did not follow the development process. Based on the applicant's actions to date, we respectively request that any approved developments now or in the future include conditions which ensure ongoing controls are in place which result in compliance to approval processes and related matters. Thank you.
The panel's not, we don't have responsibility or any role in relation to any unauthorised works. So if you're wanting to raise that, you'll need to raise it separately with the council.
Okay.
We're just dealing with the application in front of us today.
All right.
Any questions? Ms. Mars, yes, thank you.
The wall that you say you're concerned about is cracking and may get worse. Where is that wall? Could you tell me?
That's on the northerly area of the land, and it's down by the foreshore, like it's within the foreshore building line, and it's the walls, plural. There's a few of them that've got cracks that we can see from our property on 23.
So they're fully within the subject property. They're not boundary walls.
There are several walls on 25A which are not fully within their boundary because they've been building outside of their boundary. The walls I'm talking about may be entirely, I'd have to check the survey, and they're right on the boundary if they are on 25A's land.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's all of the speakers we have registered in relation to that item, 25A Queens Road, Connells Point. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is at 42 Townsend Street, Blakehurst. And this is an application for demolition works and construction of a dwelling house and swimming pool. We have a number of speakers in relation to this matter as well. So I'll firstly call upon Atif Ghali, who's on the phone, to address the panel.
If you press *6, you'll unmute the phone.
Thank you very much this is Atif Ghali. I'm the owner of number 44 Townsend Street. I thank the panel for giving me the opportunity to address it. Basically, I have only one issue, which is the window on the western elevation of the proposed development on the upper level that's overlooking my ensuite and my master bedroom. And I understand that you have visited the site, and I also understand that the proposed development has got louvers on that window with a 30-degree fixation of the louvers to allow me privacy. But my experience with my neighbour from the other side, number 46, is that there were supposed to be frosted glass on his balcony panels. Surely enough, after the OC, he's changed that to really moving louvers, which has affected the privacy of my daughter's bedroom. I'm fearing that once again we're going to face that once that proposal has been or that dwelling has been built, and he'll be able to remove the louvers after the OC, and we're back to square one. So I'm just proposing either the window to be not allowed in the first place in that position, if I'm correct in saying that that window is overlooking my bedroom, or to have a height of 1.6 meters window sill, or even moving it a little bit towards the northern aspect, so it's away, not facing my windows, basically. That's all I'm proposing, and thank you very much for that opportunity.
Thank you. We understand your one point, having visited your property today, so thank you very much, Mr. Ghali. The next speaker is Bruce Smith, again online, on the phone.
If you press *6, it will unmute the phone.
Hello. Am I on now?
We can hear you, Mr. Smith. Yes, please go ahead.
Right, okay, right. My name's Bruce Smith. I live at 38 Townsend Street, Blakehurst. I wrote to the council on the 2nd of April, actually, and set out our objection to a basketball court being built in front of this new proposed building because it's in close proximity to our house, and all residents in all residential areas, as you probably know, are legally required to do what the law describes as quiet enjoyment. Quiet enjoyment doesn't include a basketball court. Our son, actually, his bedroom is on that side of the house. There's only 13 metres approximately between my property and number 42. Anyhow, he works every Saturday, Sunday night, gets home about about daylight, and he needs to sleep on Sunday. Now, someone bouncing a basketball and the associated people noises that go with it are not conducive to a good night's sleep. And so we really do object to having a basketball court in front of the house. I don't think also that it's really suitable for the streetscape. It's not a normal thing. I did include in the letter, in the email, that I mentioned that I thought there was a sewer line running across the land about where the people, the proponents, intend excavating for an underground car park, and I didn't know that it was there, of course, but I suspected that it was because of other things. That line has already been dug up once by a neighbour and had to be replaced and reburied. Perhaps they could shift the whole building south a little bit to avoid that sewer line. But anyhow, that's their concern, not mine. My concern is wholly the addition of a basketball court in front of the new house.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. James, can you just confirm whether that continues to be part of the application or not, the basketball court? No, you can just let me know.
Yeah, in the latest plan that is submitted to the panel, the basketball court has been removed.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Smith, I don't know if you heard that, but the current,
No, I didn't.
The current plans submitted to the council and being considered by the panel have the basketball court being removed. So it's not part of the proposal anymore, or not at this stage.
Oh, I see. Well, the plan that we looked at on the computer actually show the basketball court. So if it's not there, that's great.
Good. Okay. And we did observe the location. Well, we saw a manhole cover for the sewer when we're out on site today. So we understand your point there as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
As I said,
thank you.
If they moved the building a little south, they could probably avoid that sewer line. Anyway, that's up to them.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the applicant's representatives, Mr. Yole and Mr. Burrell. So come forward. Thank you. Yeah, I understand you'll have matters you want to bring to the panel's attention, but if you could also just, to the extent that you're able, just respond to those matters that have been raised by the speakers as well.
Yes, Kim Burrell, Town Planner for the applicant. I'll first deal with the concerns raised from number 44 Towson Street. I think he was concerned about the louvered screen on the balcony. They're actually a fixed screen, so that shouldn't be directing any views across from that balcony into his private living areas at all. And the other window that he has concern, I understand that he's concerned about his ensuite. The window of concern in the dwelling is an ensuite window as well, and that should be obscure by standard requirement. So that would be addressing the issue of any potential loss of privacy to that neighbour.
Yep, thank you. The basketball court is not part of your current
basketball court has been removed.
Yep, okay.
And
all right.
We're well and truly away, as you said, from the sewer line.
Yeah, understand. Righto. If you, thanks for addressing those matters. If you now proceed to what you intended to put before the panel today. And having said that, we have been provided with your most recent written submission.
Yes,
well.
and I simply basically want to say that I think that submission that I've made is rather detailed and thorough. I understand that you have read it, so I don't think it serves any purpose for me to basically read that to you. It covers it in extreme detail. I think what I would like to do is basically hand up these low oblique photographs so that the panel can actually see the site in its local context. Can I do that?
Well, we were out on site today, so
I think it just might assist you anyway.
Right, we walked across the site. We went from street down to the river, and we went to the neighbours' properties. I mean, I'm happy for you to hand them up,
Yep.
But I just wanted to let you know that we have been out.
Yes, I understand
Yeah, okay.
that you would have done that. Thank you. The site that you're looking at, you're obviously aware that it's highlighted by a kind of blue halo in the middle of the photograph. I just simply want to reiterate that I'm requesting that the planning panel approve the application. There are obviously some conditions that can be addressed to actually address the concerns that the council's raised, particularly in relation to windows on the western elevation, the garbage bin store at the front of the site. I believe the swimming pool on the harbour side of the site is basically largely screened by the existing boat shed that's off-site. It's not part of this site. It's also going to be screened by the neighbours' trees on the boundary there. There was also a concern about the shading of this proposal. The council concluded that the shadow diagrams that we submitted with the original application were correct. The plans that we submitted with the amended set of plans were incorrect. That was a result of what was the program? A programming issue. What in actual fact does occur is that the shading of the proposal in the afternoon has minimal impact on the eastern side property simply because of the orientation of the site. Any afternoon shadow is actually cast by that building itself and the eaves line. With respect to the garbage, obviously if there's a concern with the garbage, we can move it a little bit further away from the street. The whole intention was for it to be set in a landscape setting so it wouldn't be conspicuous in the street. It's there for good reason, simply because the street's basically 50 metres away, and to basically move the bins back and forth from the street is probably impractical. It's more desirable to have it there so that when vehicles are actually leaving or pedestrians are leaving, they can take the garbage into the bin and then on the night basically move the bins out onto the street. I think that generally addresses the issues.
Okay, thank you. When you said that the boat shed's not part of the site,
That's correct.
subject to a separate Maritime New South Wales lease
Yes,
attached to this property.
I believe so, but it's not the applicant hasn't expressed any interest in doing anything with it at this point of time.
I
And that's
appreciate
what I'm aware of.
And the leased land and the current boat shed doesn't form part of the application in any way.
Correct.
All right, thank you for that. Panel members, nothing? Questions? But Mr. Scott was just raising the issue of the widening of the, so there's as I'm sure you've seen in the assessment report, the council's assessment relates to the existing the footprint of the existing building beyond the foreshore building line, and that interpretation of that.
Yes.
So, sorry to be paraphrasing you, but that little aside there was just about that increase of the width of the building. Perhaps you'd like to address that. I think you have addressed it, but
Well,
just
I have
for the
addressed
record.
it. And in my opinion, a rebuilding of the building doesn't necessarily restrict it to the existing footprint of the house. You should be able to enlarge it, and I've already spoken to senior council on this particular issue, and that senior council agrees with what I basically put to the council in my submissions.
Yes. All right. Thanks for responding to that. No other questions? No. All right, thank you very much. Did you want to speak as well?
Can I just say something? Just regarding the existing footprint, we're not actually enlarged much of the width of the existing building, but the existing footprint is actually within the distance to the existing side boundary is less than 1 meter, so it's not compliant. What we do is we just make it comply and shift the existing footprint to the correct 1.5 meter setback. I don't think we're doing anything wrong in terms of enlarging the building footprint. We just make it correct to address the 1.5 meter setback because the existing footprint is not compliant.
We understand your position, I think, and we'll take that into account as well. Thank you. Thank you. All right, thanks very much. Last speaker for today is Alex Durness in relation to 58 Walter Street. Yes, 58 Walter Street, Mortdale, and this is construction of a dual occupancy with Torrens Toll subdivision. And you're online. You're up there, Mr. Durness. We can see you on the screen. Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, well, thanks. Please go ahead.
No worries. My name is Alex Durness, company called Residential Logistics. We're the applicant for the DA. I represent our clients, which are the property owners, Mr. and Mrs. Cameron, and obviously the builder, Masterton Homes. A little surprised we're here today, to be fair. There are two main reasons why council officer has put this forward as a refusal. I'll go through those two main points now, if you don't mind. The first one being the block has two street frontages, as you can probably see from the plan that we submitted. And we were asked to put a clause 4.6 variation request in, obviously, because there's a clause in the LEP which says, and I quote, development consent must not be granted for the erection of a dual occupancy detached unless the width of the lot at the front building line is at least 15 metres. Sorry, if only one dwelling faces a primary road, 18 metres rather. So David, who's our town planner, prepared the clause 4.6. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it this evening, so he's asked me to he's prepared a statement, which if you don't mind, I'll read out if you don't mind. It says here, the clause 4.6 variation request correctly identifies that the underlying purpose of the standard is not relevant to the development given the following reasons. The clause distinguishes between a detached dual lot development that has one dwelling behind the other. That is, if one dwelling faces a primary road and the other located behind with an access handle servicing the rear dwelling, hence the need for an 18-metre wide lot. That was actually agreed to by one of the council officers we spoke with during the assessment, where it was agreed that the reason the 18-metre frontage is an LEP requirement is that the scenarios that council envisaged for a detached lot was where you're going to do where one house is going to build behind the other, and that allowed for an access handle to come down the side of the house. The key word in the clause being primary road for both scenarios. Contrary to council's officer's opinion and the reason for the refusal, there can only be one primary road, otherwise the word in the clause has no work to do. It can be deduced from that clause that in effect or inadvertently prescribes an appropriate lot width of 11 metres for each detached street fronting a dual occupancy dwelling. The clause does not deal with or anticipate a detached development having a parallel road configuration. In other words, the scenario we have today, where there is no need for an access corridor and hence an excessive lot width of 18 metres or 22 metres when both dwellings face a primary road. That's why the wording of the clause is very specific, making reference to a primary road. Georges River DCP confirms this with diagrams depicting dual occupancy developments, which are side-by-side attached, side-by-side detached, corner lot configurations, and front and back detached with an access handle leading to the rear dwelling. There are no such examples with separate front and rear street frontages, i.e. parallel road configurations such as this one. Variation request put forward by our planner is well founded that it nominates the primary road as required by the wording of the clause, stipulates the extent of the variation sought, establishes why the development standard is unreasonable and unnecessary in the circumstances of the case, and demonstrate there is sufficient environmental planning grounds to justify the contravention. And finally, it should be noted that council has already approved a similar dual occupancy development on the site, which is still valid today, And this proposed development is a significant improvement of that one. That the other previous DA was approved back in 2022. Mind you, it was approved under obviously a different LEP, but a very similar proposal, which is what we're proposing as well. And the biggest difference there, I think from memory, was the previous DA included the house facing Walter Street was going to be retained. So our proposal obviously is to have that replaced. So that's the clause 4.6 variation that was obviously an issue with the assessment. The other point that was raised was the tree issues. Now the two trees, each facing, one on Breakwell Street, the other one in Walter Street. We were asked as part of the assessment to prepare an arborist report and also conduct a root investigation report. So the owner, Matt Cameron, engaged an arborist who prepared such report, and that was submitted with the assessment. That was submitted back in June, actually. We never got a response from that report. We do understand, however, that the landscape officer at the time had provided some feedback back to the planning officer, which unfortunately was never conveyed back to us, which we never had a chance to respond. But that said, we are responding now, and David, who is the arborist, again has prepared a response to the three issues that were raised by council in regards to the reason for refusal. The first reason that our councillor gave was that both proposed driveways are still a major TPZ encroachment, tree protection zone encroachment. The response from David, the arborist, says this is correct, and that is why the root investigations were carried out. The Australian standard states the below, and I won't read what the actual clause says. But he goes on to say that the root investigations that were carried out did not encounter any large diameter roots, and thus the tree can be retained in a viable condition. Furthermore, he actually states that the previous DA, which has already been approved, has a calculated major encroachment to that particular tree and was approved without any arborist report being undertaken for that tree. The second point that was raised by the planner was the tree officer, council tree officer that is, was the arborist report focused on woody tree roots found during the non-destructive root investigation within the top 300 millimetres of soil. David's response is that yes, this is correct. Root investigations generally always focus on woody tree roots, and it is not practical for investigate non-woody tree roots. Excuse me if I'm going up too fast, but and the last point is the impact of the smaller roots that relate to the tree health, mostly present in the TPZ, have not been discussed in the report. David's final response is this is understood, and further comments can be applied to the arborist report to discuss this. The fact is that minimal non-woody roots were found and severed during the root investigation, and I reinforce the above point that the DA was approved by council with a major encroachment of tea tree without any consideration of tree two. So essentially, what I find is there is a difference of opinion, I guess, if you like, between our consulting arborist and council's tree officer, and happy we can get to some sort of medium there. But unfortunately, we were not given a chance to respond to the landscape officer's latest comments. And from what I can see, the biggest issue is, or one of the biggest issues is that the proposed driveway for Walter Street, there was a recommendation initially put forward that we utilise the existing driveway crossing. We'd rather not, but if we have to, as a compromise, obviously that's something the owner's prepared to do.
Mr. Davis, I'm going to ask you to wrap up, if you wouldn't mind.
So yeah, that's okay. That's all I wanted to say essentially. So that's so like I said, the two issues are the clause 4.6 and the tree issues, and I think we can resolve each.
Thank you. Okay, just dealing with the trees to start with. I mean, we were out on site today, and
sure.
We looked at the trees and the location of the existing driveway, Walter Street. Yes, and we also understand that at the moment there might be a difference of opinion between the council's tree officer and your arborist, but on the face of it, would appear as though it's capable of some solution.
Yeah, most certainly.
We have been furnished with a copy of the approved drawings for the 2022 30th of March 2022 consent, which is, as you've already observed, quite similar to what you're now seeking consent for.
Yes.
And we can see the location of the driveway in Breakwell Street as approved.
Mm-hmm.
And as I say, we did spend a little bit of time dwelling in Breakwell Street to look at those trees. and the location of all other driveways there as well.
Yes.
Anyway, suffice to say that we're reasonably au fait with the tree issue. The clause 4.6 and how the wording in that clause in the council's LEP is interpreted. I know you were reading from your planner's notes there,
Yep.
so they're not your words.
No.
But a number of times you referenced the description as primary road. And I don't see those words in the clause in the LEP. What the clause says is, and I'm abbreviating here, but it says,
Sure.
unless the width of the lot at the front building line is at least. And I think that's where the difference in interpretation is, that the council is of the opinion, the council's assessing officer is of the opinion that there are two front building lines because you have two street frontages. There's no reference in that clause to the words primary road, so there's no need to try and distinguish between.
I'm sorry, but there is. You stop short of the finishing the clause.
Yeah, if one dwelling faces the primary road, 18 metres, yes.
Yeah.
But you've got two dwellings with two frontages.
So you're saying we've got two primary roads?
Well, you've got two dwellings with a front building line.
Yes.
And that's important in the interpretation as well. But look, rather than get wrapped up in the interpretation of the words, the matter would appear again to be, this is just a personal opinion,
of course,
capable of being resolved with a clause 4.6 that deals with the application in the form that the council is asking you to do, rather than have an argument about legal interpretation.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay, so if we get our town planner to address that clause 4.6 in the manner which council is insisting on, then that would be a solution.
Well, I think you might find it's a way forward, yes.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll leave that thought with you because we've got to deal with this, what's in front of us today.
Of course,
but,
of course.
To use another tree analogy, I think you're not seeing the wood for the trees, or your planner isn't.
Look, I'm at his mercy. I mean, he's a professional. I'm not, but I can appreciate his argument as well.
Yeah.
And
look,
I'm
not taking either side.
Yeah.
Just the panel's being presented with two contrary opinions, and there would seem to be a way forward.
I just find it that it's at the end of the day, the outcome is the same as it is with the previous day consent as well, but it's just a matter of protocol from what I can gather is getting the wording of the clause 4.6 correct. I mean, the outcome is exactly the same.
Agreed.
Okay. Well, look, I'm sure I can give a statement to do that, and I guess we're going back to the tree issue. If council are okay for us to utilise the existing driveway crossing on Walter Street, would that solve the issue?
Look,
I know the owner would be.
Again, we're not going to come up with a solution for you today, I'm afraid. We're just we're dealing with the matter before us. But I guess I'm being a little bit broader in my position in suggesting there does appear to be a way forward on this application, not in the current in its current form, but not a million miles away from it.
No, and that's okay, and that's why I mentioned earlier that if we had opportunity to address the landscape officer's opinion, the second time we would have addressed it by utilising that existing driveway crossing. Yeah.
No, we'll take that on board. I think Mr. Skelton has a question as well.
Sure.
It's also possible that the arborist may come to an agreement as well.
Fantastic.
With minor design changes.
That is good news to hear.
But that's not up for me to say. That's for the negotiator.
No, I can appreciate that.
And look, in both what my colleague has said and what I've said, in no way are we implying any criticism of the council officers either. I mean, I totally understand their position and how they've come to their decision. It's a rational position as well. But I don't think the two parties are, as I say, a million miles apart.
Good to hear.
But we'll digest all of that and try and come up with a way forward on the matter today.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay, good. Thank you. That brings us to an end, unless there was any other questions for Mr. Dumas. No. Yes, there was.
Curiosity got the cat. Why have we got a new DA? You've got one in bird in the hands better than not. Just out of interest.
That's okay. Well, I guess that's a question for the owners to answer. To be honest, we were involved with that initial DA, so we don't know what the reasons were for going to this new DA. I'm assuming they want to replace the existing dwelling. That might be not an option. I'm not entirely sure. I don't know whether I can't really speak on their behalf.
Did you want to respond to that? You don't have to. No, it's fine. You'll have to take a seat and tell us who you are, so it's all on the record.
Okay, I'm Melissa Arakalian, the owner of 58 Walter Street. The reason that even though we got a DA approved the first time, we weren't happy with the scope of the design with the first one. We felt it was too big and too imposing, and we looked at doing a renovation of the existing house. So splitting it, doing a renovation of the existing house, and building a new house at the back. But with the new house, with the first design at the back, it would have been too encroaching with the two big houses. And the design we looked at with Masterton, they were smaller and looked more pleasant. They weren't as big.
Thanks for that. All right, that brings us to the end of the speakers for today, and I'll draw to a close and close the meeting, the public session for today. So thank you for attending. Mr. Dumas, you're off the hook as well. Thank you for attending.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Okay, the panel will now retire to consider its position in relation to each of those 6 matters before us. Declare the meeting closed. Thank you.